Hey there YouTube, AJ here. I know in my last video I said I was going to be installing this two-tooth Gimmer steering box into my hot rod. Even though the rebuild didn't go quite so well, I was going to go ahead and progress with it. However, a lot of crap's happened. I'm trying to get myself motivated again because quite honestly the rebuild of this kind of took its toll on me, not going as well as it did, and yeah, I just wasn't happy with the outcome. A lot of it I was going to run with it, but that was before this happened. This is an F1 Ford steering box. I had been searching before I got the Gimmer for a reasonably priced Ford F1 steering box to put in here because that's, you know, kind of the go-to steering setup for early Ford hot rods. However, I couldn't find one, so I ended up trying to take two Gimmer boxes that I found and making one good one. But then after I got that one rebuilt, I found this one at a really reasonable price. So I decided, what the heck, let's just throw all that work I did out the window, kind of like we did with the front end when I found the dropped axle. And yeah, let's rework it all again so we can put in this Ford F1 steering box. I am not going to rebuild it first. I'm just going to go ahead and use it as is. It spins pretty good. Eventually I probably will need to take it apart and at least reseal it. But we're just going to go ahead and move forward with it as is for now. So that decision made, first thing we need to do is go ahead and remove our mock-up stuff. Won't be needing this pitman arm anymore because we're going to be using the Ford F1 pitman arm. Fortunately, I did save the slug that came out of this hole here, so we got to weld that back in. Aside from that, let's take out our mock-up adjustable steering column, and we got to remove this box. Okay, I don't know if you could tell in the time lapse, but just getting this gutted out mock-up steering box in and out of this position back here was extremely difficult because of hitting the bell housing. Quite honestly, trying to install the fully rebuilt box with the column sticking out of it, I think the only way I was really going to be able to do that was to partially or maybe completely pull the engine, and at least I needed to get it shifted over farther in order to put the steering box in and out. I am hoping that since the Ford F1 box is going to need to sit a little further forward, that I'll be able to get it in and out with a lot less trouble with the column on it. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. I've already kind of mocked up where I think my steering box is going to need to sit. This piece of tape marks the original location of the Model A steering box. It was clear up here. I kind of made a cardboard mock-up version since I didn't have a second gutted out one to use. And if I put it in to the frame rail at about this location, I think the main box will be in front of the rear exhaust port, and the shaft will be coming out the bottom, kind of under and behind it. So I should be able to bring out my exhaust in that V made by the two. One thing about using the F1 steering box is it's longer this way. So I actually have to cut off this flange and remove some material from the sector shaft housing, to enable this part here to go, I don't know, about an inch and a quarter through the frame, and then that will help me line up my steering column shaft between the pedals where I need it to be. And since I'll be removing that flange, I won't have a way to attach it to the frame. So what most people do is make a new triangle shaped flange, one for the inside that gets welded to the sector shaft housing, and then one to the outside to sandwich it. I'm not going to make a triangle one. I'm actually going to reuse these plates, which were the backing plates for the original Model A motor mounts that I actually turned into my front motor mounts for the V8. But I still had these plates left over, so I figure I can use them to mount my steering box. There's gonna be one on the outside like this, one on the inside, Then I'll drill through this plate the frame rail and this plate to create the hole that the steering sector shaft housing will pass through. Then once we get the box in position, we will tack it to the inner plate, and that'll become the flange on the steering box. All right, so all I'm trying to do is position this kind of to the middle of the rail. I got a little bit of play up and down, so I'm not too worried about it that way. All right, then we're going to take a transfer punch, mark our holes. So there's our where we need to drill our pilot holes. Well, we're pretty committed now. We got holes. Doesn't mean we can't weld them back up again, but you know, would like to start making holes without having to weld them back up. I already got these 3 to do. So the next step is to drill these out to the final size, which now hopefully all this will fit together. And so far so good. Where's the there it is. It fits, but it is tight. Now, can we get this plate on the back? Guess we could go ahead and throw some nuts on those two. Started. And we are going to need longer bolts for this because they're just barely reaching through. They're not even going all the way through the nut. But that's not important for right now. What's important right now is they just hold everything in place. So that now marks the spot where our new steering box is going to go. That'll go away. And yes, I know how to use calipers, but this pair of calipers, you can't read the markings on the scale. So I'm just using it right now to see what size this shaft is here and measuring it. And it measures out to 2 inches. So our hole is going to need to be probably about 2 inches, because we're going to cut this off and smooth this all down to where it's the same size all the way through here. Okay, so what I did in the time lapse there was just go around, I cut off the tabs sticking out. So yeah, let's catch you up on what you missed. So I took an angle grinder with the cutoff wheel and I cut off each of the points of the flange, and then each pointy section that was left after that, I cut those off until it got mostly round. And then I took a flat disc and I worked my way around, you know, the sector shaft housing, grinding it down until it was all about same 2 inches of diameter. There are people who take these and they take the box apart to where you're just working with the housing, and you take the housing, you can chuck it up in a big lathe and you can actually turn this all nice and smooth to one consistent diameter, but I don't have a big lathe like that, so I have to do it my way. Now we're ready to drill a hole through our plates and frame. So I got a 2-inch hole saw here, and right now I just got a transfer punch in it because what we're going to try to do is mark where we want to drill this 2-inch hole. We're going to try to center it right on top of the bottom hole in equal distance between these two, and mark. Now we get that hole. Let's drill a pilot hole there. Now, when we drill this hole, we want to drill it perpendicular to the center line of the car, because the frame is kind of at an angle. But we want our steering box to be square to the center line of the car. I'm not really trying to square up to the frame and drill this way. I need to turn the drill back a little bit this way and try to keep it square. And we want to do that all the way through, even with our big hole saw, because we're going through about 3/4 inch of steel here, and we want that hole straight this way. That way the steering column will be parallel to the center line of the car, and the steering wheel will be square to the driver in his seat. We're going to try to keep that in mind when we're drilling all these holes. So now with the hole saw in, you can see what I'm talking about. It's square this way to the center line. This edge of the hole saw is already touching the steel. This edge, I got a good 1/8 inch gap. I need to try to maintain that angle all the way through in order to have a square hole to the center line. Well, there's our hole through the 2 plates in the frame rail. I'm going to go ahead and take these plates off now, clean all this up, especially the back plate, because we're going to have to weld to that one, and I'd rather get that prepared before I start trying to work the steering box in here. Alright, so we got our hole here. I've got it all cleaned up. Now it's time to see if we can work this steering box in. I have my doubts. It's still really, really tight. Oh. Alright. Oh, come on, baby. Come on, look at that. Oh, yeah. We'll take that. That is a win. Well, we can get our steering box into the frame without the inner flange welded on. Once we put that flange on it, it might be a different story. But for now, the goal is just get it in here, get it in place so we can mock it up. Right now, we got to figure out a way to kind of hold this where we need it to be. Let's go get some clamps. Let's see what we can do here.
Nope, that's not going.
Now we've got a bunch of wood blocks and a floor jack. So hopefully we can kind of figure out a path forward now. So that's not too bad there. We got pretty good clearance here for our exhaust port. This box still has to rotate forward though, because the shaft is laying on the seat. What can we do to try to get that into a better position? I went and made this. Took just a piece of scrap plywood and drilled 2 holes in it to make an oval slot. And now I should be able to raise and lower and clamp this in position pretty much right where I want it. Alright. That puts us pretty much right between our pedals. I'm guessing that's going to be pretty much right where I want it. Kind of in position.
Trying to find a place where I can get a good eyeball on it without really.
So that's going to be up about 1.5 inches. Okay, I think that'll do it for our steering wheel position. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, let's see what we got in the box down below. I feel like the box needs to shift this way. Steering box in the center of the shaft was 4 inches in from the inside of the frame, which we're not quite there. It's going to be tight to get my exhaust out, but I think I can do it. Are we level? Where's my level? Not that I really have a flat surface to kind of measure from, but 0.2, that's not bad. I'd say we're pretty good shape right there. So like, I think I'm ready to tack this in. However, I got a big problem. How am I supposed to get a welder in there to tack that in? Holy crud. This is going to be a nightmare for me. Alright, well, there's nothing I can do about it except for to do a no-look tack here. and hope we do it well. Here we go. I forgot to turn on the heat. Alright, now we got ourselves all squirmed in here again. Let's see if we can't do something this time. I don't know if I can do this from this side or not, but I'm going to try to get a tack on it from this side. Now, can we work this out? Oh yeah, because if we can work it out, we can work it back in, baby. All right. Okay, now that this is out of the car, this is how the box sat in the frame. And you can see how this flange is at an angle going across the sector shaft. And that's, as I was saying, that ends up what's keeping my steering shaft square into the car and the steering wheel square to the driver. Now we gotta weld this thing more permanent to the box. Fit this thing back in now that the flange is welded on. Alright. Alright, so far, so something. So much fun, so much fun. Hot rodding is so much fun. Ugh. Yep. Ah, look at that. Ha ha ha, ho ho ho, he he he. Well, we got the box mounted. I'd like to say that it all went in first try and fit perfectly, but no. But I had to take it on and off a couple of times and file away a little welding here, a little frame there to get everything kind of fitting back together correctly. So, but I did, and as you can see, our box is in place, our plate. I don't have these all the way on yet because I will have to take them off again, but I just wanted to see how my pitman armor is going to fit in relationship to my radius rod. And it looks like when it goes back all the way, I might need to bend this out just a little bit, maybe. I'm not sure yet, we'll see. And obviously I'm going to have to cut this drag link again and re-thread it again, which is okay because I threaded too much on this one, so hopefully we won't screw that up again this time. So we got to do that, and then we'll have to come in here and shorten up our steering column, bring our wheel down, I don't know, about 6 inches or so. It's sitting good left to right, up and down, all that's good. I just need to shorten this column, and I'll either have to weld on a tapered stub shaft, and because this column is splined, my steering wheel is not, it's tapered, so I'm going to have to come back here and cut it long, and then we'll have to turn it down to put the thread on it, and then we'll have to, behind the thread, we'll have to taper it for the steering column and cut a keyway in it. Next, we need to shorten our drag link. Basically, what we're looking at there is putting this on here, and roughly what we're trying to do is get this much thread sticking out, and I want about a ½ inch or more sticking out so I have plenty of room for adjustment, and then the rest will be inside the tie rod end. So if we kind of lay that out, that's what this tape is. This is where I want to cut it off, and then I want to thread down to here. Alright, now we got her cut to length, we hope. There's one in. There we go. All right. Now we just gotta adjust it and tighten it down, and we have a drag link. All right. So we got our drag link roughed in. Again, just need to tighten it to get it, take the slack out of it. We're not gonna do that yet because we're gonna have to take it back off to remove this, because I have these two ears that I cut off of the steering box, and I want to put those into as braces on either side of the sector shaft to the inside mounting plate, just to give it a little more stability and strength. So we're going to do that in a minute. We'll take that off. But before we do that, we need to come in here and figure out where we want our steering wheel to be, so we can cut this off the correct length, because we have to redo the end to accept the taper that's in this steering wheel. Okay, so in the car, thinking I want the steering wheel to be about that high. It's going to be a little higher once we get it to the center of the wheel. It would still give me plenty of room between the windshield and the steering wheel for my hand, so that's good. This height feels good. It's really hard to kind of figure it out when you can't, put it in the center where you actually need it. But overall, I think that'll work. So this piece of blue tape marks the top edge of the steering wheel here, but the steering wheel also is kind of inset here for a horn, and the nut will go down in here. So that may be really where we need to cut it off and then thread down to that point, and then we would taper even further. So we want to start our threads 3/8 from the top of where we want this, and then a 1/2 inch of threads. All right, so that's where we're going to cut, and we'll start our thread there. Then we're going to need roughly another 3/8 to a 1/2 inch of thread. So once we cut that off, we will remeasure and remark, as we'll have to have a section that's small enough to thread. So we'll have to turn this section down to where we can thread that. Then we will need to go back, I think it's 1 1/8. Yeah, 1 1/8 from where our thread stops. We need to taper it over 1 1/8 to match this. That's going to be the fun part. And then after all that's done, we got to cut a keyway in it. So at least for now, we can go ahead, remove our steering box last time. We can weld on those tabs, cut this off, and we can start working on that. So basically, in between each file session, I coat the metal with a Sharpie. That way I can see how much I've filed off and try to make sure I file it off evenly all the way around. And now when I file a flat spot, and then I try to do the same thing on opposite sides until I get all the way around it, and then I round it off again. It's a laborious process, but it works. So after a lot of filing, I think I've got it down to the right size for trying to put my threads on it. The problem with that is that I do not have a die handle for this size of die. So I'm going to try to get it started with this, and if I can get it started, then hopefully I can use a pipe wrench to finish it. There. Oh. How about a lot of cutting fluid now? All right, let's see if we can make anything happen here. Need to try to get this as square as possible. can get it to bite, but I'm having trouble keeping it square, and I don't want my threads to be cockeyed. I think we're getting there. Okay, now let's see if we can break our chips. Strap wrench is actually working better than I thought it was going to. A little hard to back it up to break the chips, but I'm slowly getting there. Oh, then that happens. All right, that's about as far on as I can get it right now. Once I get my taper added to it, I can probably tap the threads a little further down. All right, not too shabby. Now the big test, will the nut run on there? Look at that. We're set. Okay, now that we have our threads tapped for our nut, we need to, as you can see, this won't go on, but just a very little ways. The size of the shaft is actually the correct size for the rear hole on my steering wheel. The center of the steering wheel actually tapers down to a smaller hole in the front, over 1 1/8 inches distance. So that 1 1/8 inches distance is what we need to taper on here. What we need to do is mark our 1 1/8 inches distance on the shaft. So now what we need to do is file from this front part away at an angle, so this size at the shaft at the front is the same size as this hole here. That way it will go on and hold itself in place. Okay, there you have it. I have my tapped in for my steering wheel nut. I have my tapered part of my steering shaft for my steering wheel. They fit together rather nicely. Wheel turns, steering shaft, and therefore box. Now, the only thing left to do is I need to cut a keyway slot in here to lock my key in. However, I forgot to mark the center of my shaft before I started while it was in the car. So I'm gonna have to put it back in the car and then mark and cut my slot for this. Before we put it back in the car though, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these to fit and weld them onto my sector shaft flange for added strength. Okay, so we got our steering box back in, mounted on the frame. I put the pitman arm on, and it's pointed pretty much straight down. It's it could possibly be clocked back a little bit, but I haven't done the final adjustments yet. And where it's at now, the 4 big splines that are in here line up where it's mostly straight down. and that saves me from having to file the 4 big splines into 8 little ones. So I'm going to leave it like that for now. I think we'll be okay. I also have our steering shaft in the center of its travel, and I've marked where center is and where I need to put a keyway that will match that slot in the steering wheel. And when that keyway slot is in there, this woodruff key will be able to drop into it, and the steering wheel will then slide over the woodruff key onto the taper, tighten down the nut, and this key will lock the shaft and the steering wheel together so it can't spin on there. So we need to cut that in, and to do that I'm going to attempt to do it with a little cutoff wheel on a Dremel, because that's what I have. Okay, we've got our pitman arm on, our drag link installed. We have our steering wheel centered, keyed, and on the steering shaft. And we now have steering. Full lock to the right and almost full lock to the left. When we turn to the left, we are getting just a bit of rub before we hit the stop in here. So our tire is rubbing. When I go to bias ply tires, they're going to be more narrow, so that'll alleviate a little bit of that. Plus, if we look at our steering arm, I actually have a bit of room here. I may heat this up and bend it back just to like gain another, move this arm over like another 1/4 inch or so. I don't know, we'll see if it's a big deal, but I can always do this. I can heat this up here, bend it in a little bit, and then bend it back square again and get a little closer to my radius rod. I don't know if I'm going to go through the trouble to do that or not, but we do have steering. And even though it's not super comfortable getting in and out because of the wheel placement, it is very comfortable in relation to a driving position. I really am happy with how it turned out there. The steering wheel ended up being just a little higher in the windshield than I planned for, but I think it's okay. I really think I'm going to need that extra little bit of clearance for my knee, and it doesn't look bad from the front. Plus this is going to go up just a little bit when I'm all done, so it won't be as bad as you think. But yeah, we are steering. So I don't know what's going to be next for the hot rod here, because redoing the steering, doing the steering twice in a row, kind of got me down on the whole project. So I think I want to take a step back and do something just for fun. I mean, something that still needs to be done on a car, but something a little less stressful, and you know, something that I can just do for fun and maybe see a bigger result. I don't know. So I'll be thinking about that, trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. You know, it is what it is. We'll figure that out. I do want to thank everybody for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate any help you can throw my channel. And yeah, until next time, I'll be thinking about what I can do just to kind of boost my spirits on the project. Although it is kind of cool to be able to sit here and turn the wheels back and forth and watch them turn. That boosts my spirit, but I want to do something just for aesthetics or something. I don't know, just give me a little more personal joy than rather working on the stuff that no one's going to see. So until then, YouTube, later.